Hey, what's up, you guys? It is Tuesday. Surprise, we're here on a Tuesday. And we have a very special guest for you tonight. We are bringing to you our friend Jessica, you're in Gainesville, right?
So we're actually in Cleveland. We're right outside of Gainesville. So we're in Cleveland, Georgia.
Okay, in Cleveland, Georgia. She is the executive director of Levi's House, which is an amazing organization, recovery house for men and women.
Nope, just men.
Just men. Okay.
For now.
And for now.
For now.
And she has an amazing event coming up. So we're going to kind of like talk to her, see what she's got going on. Let's see, Sonia. I'm trying to check your thing, Sonia, make sure it's running. Okay. Got it. It was weird. It had like paper clips instead of
Oh yeah. So when I make it, it has paper clips on yours. So that just means it's LinkedIn, the paper clip.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. So, you guys, if you are watching this, you are on here. Let us know where you are watching from.
And if you're in recovery, drop your recovery date. How are you feeling today? Tell us, is today a good day? Is today not a good day? Let us know, like, what is going on in your world. Thank you, ladies, for inviting me to this conversation. I love supporting recovery organizations, or really just not even so much recovery, but anything that supports other people. I just love being a part of it. So I'm so glad to be a part of this conversation tonight.
Yeah, I was really excited about this because okay, the best Celebrate Recovery I have ever been to, like the most wild, on fire for Jesus, was the Crossroads Celebrate Recovery. Like, I had never seen so many like people in recovery just like so on fire for Jesus. So when I found out that, your organization kind of like had a lot to do with them, I was just like, wow, this is awesome. We've got to have you on. We've got to hear all about it.
Yeah, it's actually crossover. So we're it's like we are directly linked to Crossover Church. That's our church. My husband's the youth pastor. Like, we're both Celebrate Recovery leaders. Our organization is directly linked with them, and that's one of the ways it works. So it's an awesome CR. I've been to a bunch of them, and none of them are like ours.
No, I mean, it is like it's like a Jesus party.
It is.
It is, Sonia, whenever you come visit, we have to go.
You do. And even when I try to tell people about it, I literally, I can't tell you what it's like. Like, you just have to come see it, because I can tell you how cool it is all day long. But when you get in there and you feel the spirit from like the second that you walk in the door before it even starts, it's a whole different experience. So we would love to have you come sometime, Sonia.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I've been to Celebrate Recovery before. I've actually been to a couple of them. And I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad about the Spirit, like the Holy Spirit being present, but I would love to see how the Holy Spirit is present in your Celebrate Recovery.
Yes.
I think that's awesome. And something about them Georgia folks too. I just have to say, like, the Spirit is moving in Georgia.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And you see, I mean, it was so cool when I went. Like, it was like all like these big biker guys with like tattoos and stuff, and they're just like just so excited, just like loving the Lord. And I'm just like, wow, this is wild.
Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah. So, Jessica, tell us a little bit about your story about how you got mixed up in addiction and a little bit with your past and things like that.
Yeah. So I'll just kind of start at the beginning, like briefly. So I didn't grow up in an addict home. I grew up with both my parents present. We went to church all the time. I had a great childhood. I knew who and what God was in my life. I was completely 100% involved in the church, and I had no reason to, kind of stray from that. I had a great childhood. However, when I was 15, I started dating someone. And at that moment, it was, I didn't know how to differentiate love and lust, or that, I had no self-worth as a 15-year-old. And I just didn't know what that even looked like yet. So I ended up pregnant. By 16, I was a mama. And at that point, my everything changed. So I went through some postpartum depression. I had some small medical things that started popping up, and then more medical things. And so long story short, all of this stuff that was directly associated with me becoming a teen mom, like the guilt, the shame, the just feeling like everybody was always looking at me. And I started, like, the little bit of self-worth I had was just gone. And I started looking at myself the way that other people were talking about me, or, you know, people in high school are cruel. I heard some of the nastiest stuff when, you know, I was that girl that had the kid now, you know, and I really I didn't know how to cope with things. It was stuff that I wasn't used to, emotions I wasn't used to. And when I started having these medical issues, first thing they did was they put me on a bunch of antidepressants and, you know, anxiety medicines, and, oh, you're going through postpartum, so we'll just put you on this. And then, you know, all these different pills. And then with the other medical issues I was having, I ended up getting put on pain pills. And very quickly, I learned that those pain pills made me not care about what anybody said. It was a way for me to cope without coping. And it was a way for me to be numb and just completely disassociate with the world. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So that became my first way of coping, was with pills, mental health meds, opiates, whatever I could get my hands on. But then at some point, my addiction kind of took it to the next level. I was introduced to meth because I couldn't get the pills, and, you know, and then that's my new high. That was my new love. That was my new escape. And as everything does, that escalated. I was an intravenous drug user. And before long, it was anything I could get in that needle. It was literally, you have it, I haven't tried it, let's do it. It was, I had that mentality of anything's got to be better than what I'm doing right now. So why not? And I honestly had reached a point to where I don't think I really cared whether I lived or died. I didn't care what tomorrow looked like. I was just in this downward self-destructive spiral that really, as much as I hated my life while I was in it, I was so scared of what my life would look like without it. So I just kept going. I got mixed up with a horrible crowd, horrible group of people. One thing leads to another. At some point, when you become mentally, physically, emotionally consumed and addicted to whatever your substance is, I did whatever it took to get it. That included breaking any law I needed to break, hurting anybody that was in my way. None of that mattered to me anymore. So at some point, I got hit with a large set of felony charges. And this was, of course, after being in and out of county jail for a while, back and forth, you know, saying, oh, I'm going to do it this time. I'm not going to get high. And then 24, 48 hours later, I'm right back to doing the same thing again. I actually got sentenced to prison. I got sentenced to the 6 years, did the 6 years. And that was a total of county time, going through diagnostics, a couple of different prisons that I got moved around to. And then I did RSAT while I was in there. And I did the transitional center before I was released.
Wait, can you tell me what RSAP is real quick?
Yeah, so RSAT is, it's pretty much like the rehabilitation program that they have inside the prison. So they put you kind of in a separate part of the prison, and it's it was 9 months then, I don't know what it is now. It was a 9-month set of classes and groups that you go to every day. And if you are mandated to this while you're in prison, you don't get out until you complete it. So it was part of my sentence because of my drug use. So they sentenced me to that. I did it. I completed it. I wish I could say I got something out of it. I didn't, but not because you can't get anything out of it, but because I was not ready in any shape or form. I was not ready. Unfortunately, I spent the first at least half of my prison sentence just concocting this plan of how I was going to be able to do the exact same thing I was doing before I got locked up, but I was going to do it better this time and not get caught, you know? So that mentality, that cycle that I was caught up in was still very much there, even though I was physically sober. It was still my mentality that I was going to go back and do the same thing. That did change, however, at some point during my sentence. I remember having this realization, sitting on a bunk one day, reading my Bible, and just thought, oh my gosh, I don't want to live like this anymore. This is all my fault. And up until that point, if you would have asked me, I would have blamed everybody else, you know, the typical addict mentality. So I called my mom that day, and I remember just telling her how sorry I was. And, you know, which looking back, I'm sure that didn't mean a whole lot at that point, because I had always said how sorry I was and not going to do it again. But I remember it changing that day. And when I was released from prison, I never went back to drugs. However, I was that person that I know that you've heard at AA meetings or NA meetings or whatever meeting that you're at, where they're like, oh, I was a drug addict, now I just drink. And I really seriously in my mind thought alcohol was not a drug. Like it was not the same in any way, shape, or form. I thought, well, I can drink because I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a drug addict. So needless to say, getting out of prison, I did not ever go back to drugs. I've been clean from drugs since 2013, but I started drinking. And at first it was harmless and just a social thing. But then very quickly I learned that I could actually use it to cope the same way that I did the drugs. And then, of course, again, my life started spiraling. So I had, of course, lost custody of my daughter before going to prison. And I had just began to rebuild that relationship with her and try and build some of that trust back. And I was tearing it apart again, which that to me at that point was very heartbreaking.
How old was she at that time?
So she was 11 when I got out. And so she was 13 when it kind of started unraveling again and things started going back downhill. She was 14, right at 14-ish, when my life, I noticed it was spiraling very badly. I actually got 2 DUIs pretty back to back. And I called my probation and parole officer and I said, hey, look, I need some help. You got to send me somewhere. And she says, well, you can sit your VOP in jail for 30 days or I'm going to have to send you off for a year. I said, I don't care how long you send me, but I can't go back out there. I can't. Because I could already see what was going to happen is that if I continue drinking, I'm going to go back to the drugs because I could feel that same familiar coping, not caring, emotional block that I loved so much starting to creep back up. And I knew that I would go back to the drugs eventually. So I asked for her to send me somewhere. She did. She miraculously enough, another long story short, I went to a meeting that I was not going to go to. And I had a warrant out for my arrest because they let me out of county, and they really weren't supposed to. They let me out on an OR bond and I was on parole. I could not believe they did that. It was crazy. And then, so she calls me, of course, and she's like, you know, you have a warrant, right? I'm like, yeah, I know, but can you give me till Monday? You know?
It's every criminal's dream. Like, oh my goodness, they let me out.
They asked me if I wanted an OR bond and I laughed at them and just kind of looked at them like, well, I've never had that. I don't even know what that is. You know, like, you're talking to the wrong person, but they did. They let me out. So this is how I know God started working at this moment. Was the first that I can physically recognize that I know God was working. I went to an AA meeting that I wasn't going to go to because I had this warrant, but you know, I had been trying to get sober. So I did have a sponsor and she's like, I'm coming to pick you up and you're going. So she picked me up. She drugged me to this meeting. I said nothing the whole time. And at the very last, you know, when they asked, does anyone have a burning desire? It was like word vomit came out. And I'm like, I have 2 DUIs I need a rehab to go to, and I don't know what I'm doing. And, you know, so I just start like word vomiting. I'm crying. I'm having this whole meltdown. And there was a lady there who was directly involved with Homestead Women's Recovery. So she came up to me after the meeting, and there was also a graduate from Homestead there at the same meeting. Both of them had said they were not going to go that day. They just went last minute. So I know that this is where God starts working. So and Alicia Perez says, yes, sponsors are great. They're awesome. She did exactly what she was supposed to do. She drugged me there that day. So I talked to these ladies, and I did go turn myself in, something I've literally never done in my life. So I did go turn myself in, and I sat and I waited for rehab. They got me in, and I really didn't know what to expect because I'm used to prison, and I'm used to jail, and I'm used to all of those types of things. Those are familiar to me, and I can do those well, which is, kind of par for the course. But I can do those well, and I was okay with that. But then when I got to this rehab, and it was a house, and there were couches and beds and a kitchen and like regular stuff, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And it was just so unfamiliar. And I just kept praying, like, God, just somehow get me through this. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know if this is where I'm supposed to be. But just somehow get me through this. And up until this point, so this is where things started changing. Up until this point, if you would have asked me, growing up in a Christian home and having everything in my childhood the way it was, if you would have asked me if I was saved, I would have said yes. And I was totally wrong. Totally wrong. So I had been at Homestead maybe a week or two. I don't really remember. One of the girls drugged me to church with her. I did not want to go, but she drugged me to church with her, and something happened in that service that literally physically moved me up out of my seat. I ended up at the altar squalling like a baby. The pastor, who I've never met before at a church I've never been to, I had no idea who any of these people were. And he put his hand on my head, and he told me everything that God wanted to deliver me from. And it was word for word things that I had hardly spoken to anybody. So at that moment, I knew that that was God working through this pastor. And I just said, when he asked me, he said, "Are you saved?" For the first time in my life, I said no. And that's where everything started just absolutely changing 100%. So I spoke to the pastor that day. I prayed, I cried, I got up, and nothing in my life was different. Let me just say that. Nothing, my charges didn't go away. I still had to do rehab. I still had to repair the relationship with my daughter. I didn't get up from that altar and be like, okay, I'm saved and now my life is great. That's not how it works. And I think that some people expect that maybe. And that's kind of a misconception, because I still have to do the work. So I got up, I did the program. I went through Homestead. While I was at Homestead, someone took me to cross over to their Celebrate Recovery. And I was just like you the first time I saw this. And that was when they were still at the old building in Rabbit Town. And it was this little tiny building. And I walked in, and there was like fog smoke machines and these, like you're talking about, these crazy biker guys. And like everybody has like pink hair and tattoos. I'm like, where are they?
And they're like, Jesus.
And they're screaming Jesus. And I remember sitting on the back row and just looking around like, I have no idea where I'm at. I don't know what's wrong with these people. They're crazy. And then by like the third time that I went there, I was like, this is the best place ever, So I got plugged in with Crossover, and I started going to church there. I started participating in Celebrate Recovery. I did get involved with the 12-step group, trying to, just plug myself in, excuse me, wherever I could at this church, because I felt a sense of home at that church. And I knew right then that this whole time where I've been trying to use worldly things, pills, drugs, sex, men, any type of criminal activity or whatever I was using to try and fill that void inside of me, excuse me, was only able to be filled by God. And the closer I got to God, the less I had that hole. Like it was just gone. My relationship with my daughter started becoming something that's absolutely amazing. And she is my little best friend now. She's 17 and almost 18. And she is an amazing, amazing person. And we have a great relationship now. And, the things with my parents started to change. They could see that I was different instead of just hearing me say that I'm sorry's over and over. So after I graduated Homestead, I became a Celebrate Recovery leader. At some point in between all of this, I met my husband at an AA meeting, shockingly enough. And he asked me on a date, and he loves to tell this part too. I said, no, but you can come to church. Because I told God, I said, you got to send me my husband, not another man. I am sick of it. I don't want any more. I said, send me my husband. And he did just that. He sent me Cody, and Cody started coming to church with me. He got saved in small groups at Celebrate Recovery. And then we got married. He announced his call to preach. He's the youth pastor at Celebrate Recovery now. We do Celebrate Recovery, the youth church, and now we have opened Levi's house. And so that kind of gets us caught up. So.
Wow.
Long story short.
Yeah, that is awesome. Okay, so Levi's house. Let's talk about it. How did this happen?
So my husband and I we were at different recovery homes that were not Christian based, and we got through them. We did them. There was not necessarily anything wrong with them, but for us, we felt like the one thing that we were missing was the Christian aspect. And we know that without God, we can't stay sober. So we wanted to start a rehab that was Christian based, because we believe, it should be God and then recovery, because without God, you don't have your recovery. So our goal is to show these guys that with God, all things are possible. And as soon as you can realize that and give up all your willpower, and this is in any 12-step group that you go to, they all have, basically the same steps. You have to give up that will, give up that self-will, that desire to have it your way. And we use the Celebrate Recovery 12 steps, and it has to be God's will. So we knew we wanted to incorporate that. Now, we also knew we had horrible credit and no money, and didn't have a clue how we were going to start any of this. So we started praying about it. And so there was a lady in our community who owned a recovery facility, and her husband had passed, unfortunately, like a year or so before. And she was ready to retire. So she had a business that was already up and running, and we wanted to start our own. So we kind of came together, and she said, how about this? You rent the building from us, but you start your own business. It's already zoned correctly. You've got everything in here already set up the way you need. And so we just took a leap of faith, took everything that we had with a small loan, and jumped in head first. And God has 1000% opened every door that we have needed opened. We've had people donate everything down to like the paint that we put on the walls. People donated it. Our community support is huge. We have a large recovery community in Cleveland. And our church family really has been the backbone of everything that we've got going on, because so what we do is we host our own meetings in-house, as far as like the 12-step studies or the groups that my husband facilitates. But any outside meetings that we do, it's the Celebrate Recovery at Crossover. It's church on Sunday mornings. It's Wednesday night church. It's everything involved directly with Crossover. Our guys have done exactly what we wanted them to do. They've stepped up and started serving, because that's how you stay sober. So we've got one guy who plays guitar for the band. We've got one guy who runs the camera. We've got another guy that runs the lights. We've got a specific couple of guys that stay after every time and help clean up from meals. We've got these guys that have plugged themselves in. And one of them even told me the other night, he said, I've been to like 30 something rehabs. And he said, this one is different. I said, well, why? And he said, because I feel like I have a family here. And that's something that, everybody, or at least a lot of people, especially in recovery, they're missing that, because we searched for that family, but it was the drug family, and it was the people who really don't care about you. But these are genuine people who care about these guys and will walk through fire with them. Our church will get around and pray for these guys. Our pastor, Dwayne, comes by the rehab all the time. He'll just be kicking it on the couch or sitting out back on the swing with the guys. And, you know, he involves himself. And our whole church family is like that. It's always, you know, hey, what can we do to help? So the reason it's called Levi's house, though, and I have to say this, so my husband had a son. His name was Levi. He was born with cerebral palsy, and he had a ton of seizures. He was never able to, he couldn't walk. He couldn't feed himself. He was just, you know, he was a miracle child from the start because he was born with no heartbeat. They said this baby will not live. And he did. He lived. And this past September, he actually passed away, and my husband was able to be there with him, hold his hand. My husband was sober for this. And, you know, he, not only was he sober, but he had God to sit there. And he said he never felt like he was alone through this whole thing. Even though it was only him and his son in that room, he said he knew God was right there beside him. He said, I never wanted to go get high. I never wanted to drink. I never wanted to do anything crazy because I knew that God was right there with me. And that's huge. You know, for any addict to be able to go through something that is that life-changing and say, I didn't need to go use or drink over this is phenomenal. And he 100% attributes that all to God. So after Levi passed and we got this opportunity that arose, we're sitting there trying to think of names. And he said, you know, I think it needs to be called Levi's house. And when he tells this story, he says, not because Levi was an addict, but because I was an addict and it took me away from my son. So his goal is to teach these guys, not only can you be sober, not only can you, you know, create a whole new life, but you can be good fathers, you can be good husbands, you can make up this time that you've lost. You can, and for the guys who aren't daddies yet, like, just this story and the time that he lost with his son and the time that addiction took away from him and his son, he doesn't want that to have to be everybody's story. So that is a huge goal for him, is that he wants to instill these values in these guys so that they don't have to lose time with anybody that they love.
That's amazing. I mean, that's really, so I love how through the worst tragedies, like something really beautiful can come out of it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And then him just being,
no, go ahead.
Sorry, him just being able to stay sober through that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that's like the power of God right there. I mean, that is
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And like you were saying, I think like that's one of my favorite quotes is that God takes your test and turns it into a testimony, but you have to let him. You know, you have to be the vessel. And Cody was able to take his son's life and now he can make it a legacy. He can continue to touch people through Levi, even though he's not physically here anymore. You know, he said, I already know I'm going to see him again. And he had this, he had a piece about him as hard as he was struggling, and he was struggling, but he had that little bit of a piece about him that it was really just kind of phenomenal, because I don't know how I would react if that was me, you know, but he handled it so much better than I think I would have. But he is a very, very strong individual. And I know that just watching him and his relationship with God and seeing how strong that connection is, to be able to get through something like that and be sober and stay sober, like he's really a phenomenal person.
I love that, the multiplication too. You know, whenever God's in something, it's multiplication, you know, and just how many people you're able to help and to reach, you know, through that is amazing. So you are having a fundraiser
Mhm.
coming up.
We are.
So let's
So-
hear about that.
Yeah, so we have two things. We have Levi's House, which is our LLC. It is our business. That's where the guys are. This is where they live. This is their whole thing. But I get calls all the time from guys either on the street or in jail, and they say, "Hey, look, I have no family, I have no money, I have nobody, nothing, but I really need help. I need help," and they're begging for help. And so my husband and I decided we're not going to turn people away. God's going to provide, and we didn't know exactly what that was going to look like. And we have let, honestly, over half of our residents have come in with nothing. And that's okay, because God has not failed us. He has provided, and we have been okay. But we also came up with kind of a game plan that we wanted to offer scholarships to these guys, so that, and it's not going to be full ride scholarships, it's going to be partial scholarships, but it is so that they don't feel like they have nothing coming in. It's so that it's like, hey, we believe in you, we're going to offer you up this much as your scholarship, and then they're able to go to work after the first 30 days, and so they'll be able to pay that back within the year that they're there. The remainder of the intake fee, they'll be able to pay back. So we started a nonprofit. It's called Levi's Ministries. And so what we're doing is we want to raise as much scholarship money as we possibly can, so that when these guys call and they say we have nothing, we can say, it's okay, we got you. And so we're rallying for all community support that we can get. So my husband is an avid wrestling fan. I cannot say the same, but it's okay. I support him in his childhood endeavors here. So he wanted to do a wrestling event, and apparently it's going to be a huge hit. Everybody is super excited about this. But he knows some people in the community, and has somebody else that's at our rehab that knows some people. And so they've set up this huge, it's going to be the largest outdoor wrestling event that has ever happened in North Georgia, Northeast Georgia. We are setting up a real live wrestling ring, and we have, gosh, I don't even know how many of the pro wrestlers that are coming out. But we have like tag team events, main events. Just I don't even know what all we've got. We've got a ton of different events that's going to happen there. And then we also decided to do raffle. Our church family, for the most part, donated everything for our raffle. We're going to sell food. We got stuff for the kids. We're also going to have a prayer tent set up there. So anybody that walks in needing prayer, they can go straight over to the tent. Anybody that is struggling in their recovery can go over to the tent. We're going to have literature to hand out. We're going to have, people that are on call through the entire event. So if somebody is struggling, if somebody is just having a hard day, or they just need prayer for whatever it is, or just want prayer, then they can go to this tent and they can talk to somebody. And so we are doing doors open at 6, and it is bring your own chair. It's potentially one of the biggest, I think our pastor called it the biggest redneck event we've ever had at Crossover. So yeah, it's bring your own chair, and we're going to get to see people get knocked out. And I may or may not have volunteered my husband to get knocked out during this event as well. So we'll see how that goes. But
and it's this Saturday, right?
It is. It's this Saturday, October 7th. It actually starts at 7. Doors open at 6. It is $20 a person to get in, kids 6 and under. All of the proceeds are going straight into the scholarship fund for these guys. And, we have a long-term goal of being able to buy property, build a much larger facility, because right now we can only house 15 guys. So we would love to have a much larger facility, because honestly, right now, if I had a 100-bed facility, I could fill it up. But we've got guys that are sitting in jail waiting specifically for our program, because something that God is doing inside of our program has started to spread like wildfire. And we've got guys that are coming to us from other programs. We've got guys that are sitting in jail for 6 months just because they want to come to our program. And we have a goal, we have a dream that we are going to be able to purchase property, build a building, and have a minimum of 40 guys. And so if this event goes well and we can build up the scholarship fund, then we're also going to start hopefully doing other events and other outreaches, so that we can potentially be able to reach our goal within the next couple years and get a larger facility.
So I'm telling you, like, there was something, because when I saw you, at the event, and like, I was like, man, there is just something about this. Like, there's something about this ministry. Like, what can I do? Like, how can I help them? That's when I was like, you want to like come on and, because there's like something that like drew me, you know what I mean? I'm like, there's something about this place that is like exponential, you know what I mean? It's like there's something on it,
Yeah.
So,
I agree. And the way that you talk about it is so authentic and genuine, and just you can really feel how much your heart is into this, and how much this really means to you. It's really cool.
Yeah, we're very dedicated. My husband and I live an hour away from the facility. We drive every day. So we're super dedicated. We have little kids too, so we just tag them along with us, and we're like, hey, we're in this as a family. We're super family oriented. So we have had family days for the guys. We make sure that if their families are, non-toxic and sober, they can come to the facility and visit. We invite all the families to come to church with us. It's not a rehab. It's like a home. And people that walk in there that have never set foot in that building before, they're like, man, I feel something in here. Something feels different in here. And these guys, as soon as they walk through the door, I don't care if they've been to 10 or 15 rehabs before, as soon as they walk in, they're like, okay, something's different. And that is the Holy Spirit. And I cannot stress that enough, that without the presence of God on this ministry, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. But you can feel the presence of God, and you can feel it, like you were saying at the recovery event. As soon as I got up on the stage and I said something to my Levi's House guys and about crossover, everybody screamed Jesus, just like they do at CR. And it doesn't matter where we are. We can be in a Walmart, and if there's 2 or 3 guys in there, they scream Jesus at the top of their lungs and act like fools for God. And it's awesome. It's awesome. They did it at the bowling alley when we went bowling one night. They've done it at concerts, at wrestling events. So, but they are so on fire for God and recovery right now that anywhere you see one of our guys in the community, you'll know, because they're going to pull you to the side and talk to you about Jesus. So
that is awesome. You're definitely raising up men for sure. Which I feel like is so needed in this season, raising up men of God for sure. Does anybody have any questions for Miss Jessica? Is there anything else that you want to share?
I have a question. Okay. So you said something earlier, and I think it's something really important that we share with the viewers that are watching, and you just never know who's watching and who might need to hear this, right? So you had said in your story that, you were raised in the church, you had a good upbringing, but that you didn't really think that you were saved. And so when you have that encounter with the pastor and he said that, are you saved? You said no, right? Like you knew no. And so maybe there's somebody that's watching this right now that doesn't know if they're saved. Like, how do you know if you're saved? And then if you feel like you're not, like, what do you do to know that you're saved?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome that you brought that up. So I will say, for me personally, I had one of those experiences as a kid at Vacation Bible School or something. I just remember everybody goes to the altar. We all prayed this little prayer. I grew up in a Methodist church. So, we did this prayer that they do in the Methodist church, and I just thought I was saved. And so when the pastor asked me that, and I had the conviction of the Holy Spirit on me, for me, I was scared to say no, because I was like, oh my gosh, what is everybody going to think? Or, I've always said I was saved, and I've always gone to church. So what is this going to look like if I say I'm not saved now? And for whatever reason, I was able to just get past that fear at that moment and just say, no, I'm not. So my pastor and some of the other people that I've heard at our church have always said it like, if you walked out the door right now and you died, do you know for 100% fact, without even having to think about it, without having to sit there and question, like, Oh, I don't know. Maybe I would go to heaven. Maybe not. If there is a maybe in there at all, you're not saved. And if you can't say for 100% fact that, yes, if I walk out the door right now and I die, I know I'm going to heaven. If you can't say it and say it that quick, you're not saved. And the thing is like people have spiritual experiences in church, right? You go down to the altar, something hits you in the music, something the pastor says, whatever it is, you go to the altar, you pray, you cry. And that is like the feeling of the Holy Spirit. And yes, you're having a spiritual experience in that moment, but that's not what saves you. What saves you is admitting that, Jesus died on the cross for you, admitting that you are a sinner, asking for forgiveness, and asking him to be the Lord of your life and come and live inside your heart. That is how you get saved. So if you have not experienced in depth that actual encounter, then you've probably had a spiritual experience, but not actually received Christ into your heart. And honestly, I've heard so many stories. Like my pastor said, he got saved driving down the road one night, and something hit him in the middle of the car while he was driving, and he was like, "This is it." Some people it happens in church. Some people it's randomly walking down a street someday. It doesn't have to be one of those things where people imagine like, oh, you're in church and this happens, and sometimes it is, and that's fine, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes God is going to reach you wherever you're at, and it doesn't matter. And I think that's also a misconception, is that like, I have to get my life right before I can get saved, because the way I am right now, God is not going to accept that. And that is the complete opposite of what God is calling us to do. So God is calling us to give ourselves to him, and then he's going to help fix all that nasty stuff, right? So you don't have to be clean and perfect. If you're waiting on that, it's never going to happen. So I don't care if you were in the middle of your addiction. I don't care if you have done the things that you think are completely unforgivable. God is just waiting on you to say, hey, I'm going to give myself to you. I want you to come live inside of me. That's all he's waiting on. He's already given you grace. He's already given you forgiveness. He's just waiting on you, and honestly, like if people are struggling with that, and that's something that they have questions about, I don't mind if you want to put my Facebook information for Levi's House or whatever on there. Anybody that reaches out to us, we'll have one of the pastors call you. I'll call you if you're a female. I do not mind to reach out to you. If you're not, I'll have either my husband or our pastor reach out to you and talk to you. We do not mind. We are always about bringing more people into God's kingdom, because you just never know. You never know when it's going to be your time.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful. I'm going to drop, just for the people that are on my Facebook, I'm going to drop the link into the chat. So if you guys want to reach out to her, follow, support their program, you guys can do that. And then I also really liked what you said about the sanctification process, right? Because I don't know if we all, but a lot of us think that we have to come correct, right? Like come perfect. Right. And that was one of my biggest struggles, is that I didn't think God would accept me because I wasn't right yet. But actually, like, it's the total opposite. You come first, and then he will make things right within you. So I love that you shared that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, your mom says you don't take a sponge bath before you get in the shower.
That's it. I like that.
Yes. Shannon said, I don't want to lose this comment. That's why I haven't put it. I'm just reading. Read something last night. We can't say yes to our calling until we say no to other things. Let God fill that hole, and his grace will cover us.
That is good. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is
okay. The noodle maker.
Right. I have a friend that relapsed. He came out about it, but people around him are shaming him. Any advice on how to help him?
So honestly, I would say this is the kind of the thing. So if you're going to continue to be around the same people, same playground, same area that you relapsed around, and if you're looking for validation or help from that group, you're probably searching in the wrong place. So my suggestion would be for him to reach out to local meetings, reach out to a church, find a sponsor, find an accountability partner, Find someone that is in recovery or someone who is associated with recovery that can help him find someone in recovery. Because if you're looking for answers in the same place that you have found the problem, you're probably going to be looking, in the wrong place. So I would say definitely reach out to people who are in recovery and try and get a different group of friends, different group of support system, accountability partners. I'd definitely search for a different group.
Yeah, and that was part of your story, right? You said in the very beginning of your story how you were looking for acceptance and validation and what everybody else thought of you. And then where did that lead you, right? So we can never be wrapped up in what other people think about us because we are never going to make everybody else happy.
Right.
And really, like, it's the people that support us are the people that we should surround ourselves with. If they don't support us and if they don't lift us up and encourage us, then they really don't deserve a spot in our life anyways.
Not at all. Not at all. Right. And that's what I try to tell these guys too. Family can still be toxic. Your friends that you've known since you were this big can still be toxic. Just because they're family or old friends that have known you forever, that does not make them healthy for you. And I think, someone said if they are true friends, they would support him. And that is correct. And that's what I try to, I have to get these guys to understand, and especially some of the girls that I sponsor too, they'll say, well, but this person, they're really a good person. They just, they have this going on or that or whatever. And I'm like, okay, look, if they don't support you being sober, they're not your friend. They're not even a little bit. So, and it's not that a lot of family members don't really, or friends don't really understand addiction. So it's hard sometimes for them to fully support the recovery process, but they also don't have to discourage it. So you just have to be careful who you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You can even find that, in the recovery rooms, you know what I mean? Some people who are just still so broken themselves, they can't be happy and support anybody else.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. My husband and I always joked, there was this one particular person in one of our home groups at one point, we're like, he's the most miserable person. And he would say, I've got 37 years. And we're like, this is not how we want to live. Sobriety is fun. Being healthy is fun. Being a Christian is fun. I know people think like, I'm going to get sober. And I was guilty of this. I thought I'm going to get sober and I'm going to get saved. And I'm going to be so boring and my life is going to suck, and then it was the complete opposite. So gotta surround yourself with the right people.
Right. That's how I was too. I came into recovery 8 days before my birthday. And I thought lame birthdays from here on out. That's it. My life is over.
Yeah.
Not the case. Not the case. So.
And now you've remembered every birthday since. Go figure.
Yes.
Got the pictures to prove it.
Yeah. And they're not pictures that don't belong on the internet.
Right. They're pictures you can actually show. Yeah.
Right.
I feel personally attacked.
Don't. Trust me, we all had them.
Oh, let's talk about this for a minute. I think this is how do you find God? Doug says that he's having trouble finding God in his life with 10 years of sobriety, but he's still struggling to find his relationship with God.
So something that I heard a while back, and I'm not going to quote it correctly, but I'm just going to paraphrase. So you don't actually find God. God has already found you. He's right there with you. He's with you continuously. So you really don't have to look far. He's already there. So now as far as creating a relationship with God, my best advice is just the same way that you surrender your self-will in getting sober and in recovery, it's kind of the same thing. You have to surrender all of your will. You have to start reading your Bible. You have to start searching and seeking in his word, because his word is life. That's where you're going to find all of your answers. There is not a single answer that is not found somewhere in that Bible. And honestly, people who are struggling and they're saying, I don't know how to find God. It's a matter of a lot of times God speaks and we won't be quiet long enough to listen. So I spent a lot of time praying and asking God for things, but never listening to what his answer was for me. I just kept asking and asking and asking. And then I would get so upset when things didn't go my way or I didn't get what I asked for. And God was really protecting me because those were not the things that he meant for me to have in my life. So when I started making a conscious effort, the same way that we chase sobriety, you have to chase God just that hard. So anything that you chase in your life, your career, your dreams, your sobriety, whatever it is, you have to chase God that hard and then some. Like you have to make that your goal. So you have to go to church, you have to read your Bible, you have to get involved. That was huge for me. Getting involved in a church, not just going to church. Getting involved, starting to serve your church is huge. And, once you get in the middle of the boat, as they say in recovery, once you get in the middle of that boat and you stay there for a while, it will become just increasingly evident that God is already there. He's been there the whole time. You don't have to find him. He's already there. He found you, and he's just waiting on you. So.
So good. Yep.
Excuse me.
Good conversation is listening, not just talking. That's a hard one too, being able to hear God's voice, and that kind of goes along with that question of like, how can I find him? People think, well, I can't hear him. And hearing is not always an ear thing, hearing is sometimes a gut thing, like we know when we're about to walk into a bad situation. We know when we're like, this is not a good thing. Right. So it's kind of like that, like it's hearing with your gut, and that was kind of how I recognized, I remember my moments when I realized like, oh my goodness, you've been here the whole time. Like I've been looking for you for so long and you've been here this whole time, and it's just, man, it is just incredible. And somebody, who was it? James here talking about, where did it go? Faith, having faith, right? Expect, believe that God is with you. Like believe that everything in the Bible says is true. Whatever, like what it says is true. Like it says he's with you. He will never leave you. There's nowhere you can go to get away from him. He's the craziest stalker ever. There's nowhere you can go.
Yes. He is perfected it. Yes. Yeah, I like that. And as far as the hearing God, I'm not going to sit here and say I've heard the audible voice of God come down and speak to me in words. That's not how God communicates with me. And maybe he does for some people, but that's just not true for me. For me, he gives me signs that are just right there in front of my face. Like you can't deny these things. My husband and I, on countless occasions, have directly prayed for something, and in like moments of us saying amen at the end of our prayer, we've gotten a direct answer from an outside source. And I mean, you can't deny that is absolutely 100% God speaking to us. We have a little boy named Jackson. He is 14 months now. And once we got married, we prayed and we said, God, we missed out on the time with our other children. And we really want to raise a child together. We want to raise a child in the church. We want to raise a child for you. If you feel like we're ready for that, then we're ready. And within a month, we had a positive pregnancy test, and now we have the most beautiful little boy. God has just literally given us way, way more than we deserve, but he answers things for us. Sometimes in a tangible sense, but sometimes also, like you're saying, with the gut instinct, like we pray about every single resident that we let in to our facility. And there's been a couple of times where we've prayed about a resident and we got no answer. We didn't get a yes. We didn't really get a no. And we waited to see what God was gonna tell us. And in the meantime, they found a different facility, or the judge didn't sign off on it, or whatever it was. So I know that you also have to be comfortable waiting. You have to be comfortable waiting and allowing God to answer things in his time, because I am very impatient I want an answer right now. And I typically want it to be the answer that I want, I mean, I'm human. So getting comfortable with the waiting, for God to speak to you is also huge. So you can speak, you can listen, and then sometimes you just have to wait.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that too, the never cease to pray, because in your waiting, don't ever stop praying. Don't ever stop praying. That's the most powerful tool that has been given to us is prayer.
There's something in the waiting too. Like when you are waiting, God builds your character and he prepares you. That's what he's doing. That's why you're waiting, to get prepared for that next season, because sometimes we ain't ready for it and we just have to wait a little bit in order to receive the blessing that he's got for you. And I love what you were talking about, like receiving that abundance from him, right? Like what you asked for, like he multiplies his answers for you. And it's so beautiful. And I think that also for me, like God speaks through other people. And especially in my early recovery, it would come in like not increments, confirmations, right? Like one person would say it and then another person would say it and then another person would say it. And I'd be like, that must be God, because 3 people can't be telling me the same thing. Like this must be a message, because I was very, young, spiritually young then, and a little bit hard-headed and stubborn. And so sometimes I needed to hear things a couple of times. And I think, like Shannon was saying in the comments, like God speaks through other people. He speaks through songs. He speaks through signs. He speaks through gut feelings. He speaks through his word. I mean, there's so many different ways that he speaks to you if you will open up your heart and just allow yourself to look for it, right? Look for it. It's in the little things. He cares about every single little thing that we do throughout our day. So it's in the little things. And if you're paying attention and looking for it, you will find it, and pray for it. God, find me, like show me, find me.
Yes.
And you'll start to see.
Yep. And also for me, it was like wherever I was giving him place, right? Like God is a gentleman. He's not going to come in where you don't allow him, right? Yeah. So like for me, my biggest thing was in my morning devotionals. Like, and I'm telling, I mean, this is since early recovery 2015. Every single day I do morning devotionals. Now I have several of them. But it was like he would speak to me through those devotionals, because that was where I was giving him, number one place. Like, Lord, speak to me. I expected him to speak to me through these devotionals. You know what I mean? And it's like every day he speaks to me through them. Still, since it's 8 years later, he's still doing it.
Sends them to me all the time. I can vouch for this.
Yeah, he does, and I agree with the speaking through other people too, because a lot of times, I feel like I'm struggling so hard trying to get an answer without being able to wait on an answer. And then I can start talking to other people. And as I'm talking to other people, I will, like Sonia said, I'll get confirmation. Like this person says this says the same thing. They definitely haven't communicated with each other. So I know it has to be coming from somewhere else. It has to be God. So.
Absolutely. So to close us out, look, I just kind of feel like a call to do this. Jessica, why don't you walk us through what it would look like for somebody to pray a prayer of salvation?
Yeah, so I'm not going to say that I have this down to a science by any means, but normally when we're talking to somebody, it's you have to be willing and you have to be ready. And like you said, God is a gentleman. He is not going to go anywhere that he is not accepted. And if that door is not open, he's not going to walk through it. So the first step is definitely that willingness, that ready to accept Christ. And I know most of the girls that I've prayed with, it's just a matter of saying, Lord, I believe that you sent your son to die on the cross for me, to get rid of my sins, that you paid the price for me. You paid the price for my sins. And today I want to give you all of me, all of my life, all of my heart, all of my everything. I want to give all of that to you. I want you to take away anything out of me that's not of you, Lord. And I want you to come and live inside of my heart. I want you to be the Lord of my life. And I want you to be my Lord, my Savior, and I'm asking today for your salvation. And as I walk the girls through this prayer, Of course, sometimes it varies a little bit depending on, the moment or what we've got going on. But basically, if you're saying, God, I believe in you. I believe that what you did for us about sending your son is true. And I'm willing to give you my life, but not only give you my life, but I want you to come and live inside of me. Then it's pretty basic. And how you say it is not necessarily as important as meaning it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, if anybody did receive salvation through that prayer, if you want to, you could reach out to us personally, or you can comment. If you don't want to comment, reach out to us personally. It's just so we know that that this was heard, because I definitely feel like this was definitely for somebody. So. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on. Levi's Ministries is the place that you can go and donate. Yes.
So you right now, if you go on our website, it's levi'shouserecovery.org. We do have a donate now button at the bottom. That's a direct link to that. So anything that you do on the donate now goes straight to the Levi's Ministries. And if you'd like a receipt for that, then please, by all means, in the little note at the bottom, let me know. I will give you a receipt from the nonprofit. And, even on our website, or our Facebook or our email is levishouse2023 at gmail.com. And please reach out to us. And if you want us to pray that prayer with you, and if you're still not sure how to quite pray that prayer, if you're not fully sure that you've received salvation, please reach out to us on any of our platforms. We would be more than happy to pray with you. I will call you personally and pray with you.
Yes. And congratulations, James. It's the best decision you'll ever make in your entire life. We're so proud of you.
Yes. This is the first step to the rest of your life.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and hanging out with us. And you guys, we will see you next week. Right, Sonia? We're going to be on Monday.
Well, we got to figure out our day, but yeah.
We'll be
here sometime next week.
It'll be a surprise. We'll just show up.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
Thank you.